So where I'm going to start from is I'm just going to start from the wall and basically kind of the overview. So if we look at this nice little diagram, I've almost made this diagram, but I haven't completed it yet, and I haven't done anything else. So everything else beyond that is blank. So I've got my setup, and I have my connection.py file set up, but I don't even have the port set right. I've got an empty connection, or server.py file, an empty index.html, and an empty comments.html, which is eventually going to become the wall. All right. I also have not done anything with my ERD diagrams, but I've gotten close to what's on that platform. And so I wanted to make the connections because I thought it might help us kind of understand what was going on. And so users can have many messages on the wall. And so to get a many-to-one relationship, we basically just click this little forked arrow and basically say, click on the thing that can have many, click on the thing that can have one. Great. It adds this new key, and then we're going to have to rename that slightly just to kind of talk about it. I like to have that thing singular user ID.
When do you use the solid line?
The solid line will be a key that can get propagated through. In this case, since we just want to have a relationship that goes from users to messages and not worry about having propagation, we're just using the dash line. But the solid line will basically say, hey, this key is available no matter what connection we make. And so it'll try to do that for you. All right, comments. Users can make many comments. So same kind of logic. Oops, there's the solid line one. I actually want the dash line again. All right, so, and also messages, each message can have many comments. So that's the other connection. All right, we could have done that with one fell swoop with this end to M and created it that way. So we could have done something like yoink, yoink, and then gotten those different pieces because both those two fields are there, but let's not do that for now. Let me just delete these things. Sorry. Delete that. Okay. All right. So there's the pretty much the setup that we initially start with. Again, I'm going to change these from plural users, which was what gets automatically propagated, to singular users and message. And cool. Now I can forward engineer this thing. Database, forward engineer. Ugh. Continue. And notice it went to 8889. And hopefully we'll get our different check marks. Awesome. All right, go to my connection, refresh the schemas that we have, and we should have a new one that's the wall.db. Make sure that's the one that we wanted. So let's check out our model really quick, our ERD diagram. Oh, I called it myDB. Let's change its name. So let's call this thing just wall. Does that sound like a good name for it? Okay. If you can't see, feel free to scoot forward. All right, so now forward engineer this thing again. Still to 8889. And now if we go to my connection, hopefully we'll now see when we refresh the available schemas, we'll see a new one called wall. All right, double clicked on that, turn it bold. So now when we do queries, we can do something like select star from users. Cool. All right, so I think we're at the right place, and we can move on from there. So let's go over and start using this database. All right, so we're going to start in our server, get our server up and running. We're going to use render template, request, redirect, session, flash, yada, yada, have a secret key, get our thing up and running. We also want to say, hey, let's go and get stuff from our connection file. So from connection, import MySQL connector. So I'm just going to look at it, make sure I know what the name is. So MySQL connector. Great. So going back over to server. We know what MySQL connector is. It's just a function that we're going to be able to run. And it's going to come from this connection module. So we consider a method of that connection module. All right, when we run it, we're going to take two things. We're going to take the app. So we're going to say myDB equals MySQL connector. Well, I can't type right now for some reason. Like my fingers are all slow. I think I got like poisoned at lunch or something. So we're going to pass in app, which we've created here on line 3, and we're going to pass in what database we're connecting to, which schema, and the one that we just created is the wall. Awesome. So we need to go back into our connection.py and change one last thing, and that last thing is which port we're identifying with. So we constructed that database for port 8889. We are actively running port 8889, and that's, I guess, the key part, is which port is actively running, and so we need to make sure that that thing matches. All right.
Mike, you may have talked about it on another recording, but is there a reason why you like to change your port from 3306 to 8889?
No, it's more a development thing. So I tend to like to develop outside of kind of the root port that I might use for deployment, which is 3306. And it's more to show that you can adjust, and this is a different server that you're using. So no really great reason. In fact, with PCs, it's a little bit harder to change this port around easily, and so people just develop on 3306 as well. So it's not a big deal, just kind of an added level of security, I suppose.
Settings?
You can. It's just a little bit trickier.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail further.
No. There's no derailments. All right. So that should be relatively functional at this point. So now we want to go ahead and build in some logic. We're going to use some other things other than just Flask, right? So we're going to use Flask bcrypt. So from Flask _bcrypt, import capital bcrypt. And this bcrypt is going to allow us to do hashing. Whoa, too much. All right. And we're basically going to say, hey, let's make a lowercase bcrypt variable, and let's have that bcrypt variable equal bcrypt, which is the Flask bcrypt, and pass in the app so we have access to that, everything in the app in there. All right. Other things that we might want to have, we might want email regex. So that we're going to use the regex path re, and then I just created an email variable here, which is basically the general one from the platform. And I think that might be all the things we're going to need initially for,
Date time.
Oh. And we're just going to import all of date time. So just like we imported all of re, and then we can access any piece of date time, like datetime.datetime. So, cool. All right. So what do we want to do when we first go to our root route? So at app.route root, what do we want to do? Well, what I want to do is I want to load our index page. And our index page, all it's going to have in it is basically our data. So we're going to return render index.html. What's that?
Can you do it without the template? Render _template?
Oh, you can in Django. But we need a request also. Yeah. Yeah. So the Django call, so one of the things I'm going to mess up a whole bunch today is going to be, this is going to be the Django call.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's very similar, but not quite the same. So, all right. So we want to have a route for logging in. And that's going to be coming over with a methods equals post. And right now we don't know what we're going to do with that exactly, so I'm going to put a pass there. Similarly, app.route login or register. Again, that's something that's going to come in over with a post. We're going to pass there. We're going to make another app.route logout. Again, that's just going to come over as a get because we want to be able to make it easy to log out. Put a pass on that. Register.
I think you need to D10 on 17, 18. 17 as well.
The actual
Oh,
function.
yes. This should be still. There we go. That looks more right. Cool. And then at app.route, let's call this thing wall. We're going to def load wall. And when we load the wall, we know what we're going to do. We are going to go ahead and basically return render template. And we want to go after index.html or comments.html. I don't know why I call it comments. Let's name it something more interesting like wall. Okay. And we're going to pass something over to that. And what we're going to pass over to our wall are basically all of our messages. Messages equal messages. And for now, we're just going to have a dummy message is equal to some sort of lame dictionary. Lame dictionary.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on when you do that, specifically where after in render template you put messages equals messages?
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's one that I missed quite a bit.
Yep. So there's kind of two ways to pass information between views. The first one is using session. And when we use session, so if you say, hey, let's make this session variable something like session bracket quote user equals Mike. This thing is going to be available whenever our Chrome browser is open or whatever browser we're using is open, we're going to, in theory, have access to this thing. So this thing's going to be stored. I could use it and look at it on the index.html, wall.html. Even crazier, if I had another Flask application up and running, I could actually access this session variable with that Flask application. Okay, so that's what session does. The other option is to pass it specifically to that particular event. So the case would be, hey, let's just create this variable locally, like on line 31, and then we can pass it just to this template the one time.
Okay.
In this case, because lame dictionary is hard-coded, we'll always get the same thing. But in theory, if the database had changed and this was a database call that was creating this dictionary or list, then it would update every time we refresh that page.
Okay. It's like a database call being like select all from messages.
Exactly. Exactly. Cool. All right, so we kind of have a general path as to how we're going to go forward. So I'm just going to write all the code on this page, and then I'm going to make my HTML afterwards. It's not always how I do it. It's just how I'm going to do it for rapidity. All right, so we know what register is going to do. Register is going to take a request form, and we're going to pass over a bunch of information, which we're going to then validate. So the thing I like to do is just print request form so we know what we're dealing with beforehand. And I've been doing lots of things in Python 3, so you'll see me put quotes around or parentheses around print statements a lot. I'm trying not to do that right now because I'm currently using 2.7, and that's what you guys are going to be using. At least, yeah.
You could import print function from future.
I could. But I'm not going to. All right, so we've got a registration. We're going to print that request form, and let's make our validations. What sort of validations do we want? So let's say length. Let's go after first name and last name greater than 3 characters. So if request.form bracket quote first name greater than 3. So what do we need here? What's the method that we want to get the length of something? Len. All right. So how do we want to keep track of those mess ups that we have if they don't pass this statement? Sure, let's make ourselves an errors array. Or list, sorry. All right. So if that's not true, if it's shorter than 3, so if it's 1 or 2 in length, sorry people that are named like Sue, S-U, you guys can't register onto our page. I know well, let's do 2 letters. That way we get 1-lettered or 2-lettered people. All right. So now we want to say, hey, errors dot append. Let's give it a key. Let's make this error as a dictionary rather than that. Let's make ourselves a new key. Let's call this thing a first name key. And that first name key, we're going to say first name must be at least 2 letters. All right. So let's do the same thing for last name. Told you I'm having difficulties typing today. Okay, I can do this. I can really. All right. What other ones we want to do? All right. So if we want to check to see if the passwords match. So let's do if request.form bracket quote password is equal to request.form confirm password. Not equal to. We could pass something back like errors matching. Passwords must match. We do, let's make sure our password is longer than 6 characters. Greater than, so if it's less than 6, then password length. All right, we can copy the email validation from email, but if we didn't do that, if not, match, re.match. And then, oh, sorry, email regex.match, and then request.form bracket quote password, or sorry, email, email, right? And our error would be email must be valid. All right, so those ones are all looking fine and dandy, I hope. One thing that we want to do is we want to prevent people from registering who have already registered. So we want to make sure that we actually have the right person, and we don't want to let people double register. So you can't register with the same email multiple times. All right, so let's do that. So I'm going to just put a note here, preventing people from doing multiple registrations. All right, so let's make ourselves a query, and that query is going to say, hey, let's select everything from our users table where email is equal to :ID or :email. We're going to take and get some data that's going to be a dictionary, and that dictionary data is going to have a key of email, and it's going to be associated with the request.form bracket quote email. All right. Request form, not from. All right. So basically what we're saying is, hey, let's just go ahead and get and see who already is registered with this email, if there's anybody there or not. All right. So let's say user equals, what did we name our database? We named our database mydb, query underscore db. So we're basically going to run this query and pass the data in. All right. So what we'd expect to have happen is if this doesn't find anybody, this query right here, we're going to end up with an empty list, right? Nobody with that email. And then otherwise we're going to end up with something in there, somebody with that email. All right, so user is going to be a list, and it's going to either be an empty list or a list with at least one element in it. Ideally, just one element. So how would we check for that? We can just say if len user is greater than 1 or greater than 0, then we're going to say, hey, guess what? Errors. Let's make ourselves a new thing, and we're actually just going to say and use our same thing that we used before for email, so we don't give away too much information. Because we don't want to know that somebody already has that email. We just want to be like, yeah, that's not a valid email. Sorry. All right. Yeah.
So in Python, the empty list is considered false,
Yes.
which means that rather than checking if
Just-
len user greater than 0, you just say if user.
Sure. Sounds good to me. All right. Cool. That makes sense to everybody? Since empty list is false. Great. All right. So now we have basically said, hey, we've passed all these validations or not, and we can tell if we've passed all these validations whether or not we have errors or not have errors. So now we can say if errors, or len of the errors, and we just do errors again. Is our dictionary is considered falsy?
I think so.
All right. Well,
Dictionary is falsy also.
so if it's an empty dictionary still, then we know that we don't have any errors in there. So at this point, what we can do is basically say, hey, why don't we register this user? All right. So to register a user, not too difficult. All we would do is say, let's go in and register that person. So here it goes. So we want to make a query, and that's going to say insert into users, and then we're going to pass in a bunch of values, right?
Sorry, should that be an if not errors?
Yes. All right, so we're inserting into users, and we want to pass in first name, last name. We want to pass in email, and we want to pass in a password. But do we want just any old password? No, we want a password that's been encrypted. All right, so we're going to encrypt our password, and we're basically going to do that by saying, we have to do a couple things first. We have to say temp password equals request.form bracket quote password. All right, and then we're going to use bcrypt. And to use bcrypt, we're going to say, hey, let's make ourselves a new password. Is equal to bcrypt. Let me just grab it. All right. Temp password. For some reason, I'm doing this because if I remember correctly, for some reason the request form, if you pass it into bcrypt, it doesn't like it directly. But
Mine would.
okay, well then let's get rid of this part and just pass it in directly because that's much cleaner looking. All right, so we're basically saying, hey, let's make ourselves a password that's not just a plain text password. Let's make it a bcrypted password. Okay. All right. So we got first name, last name, email, password. We also want to pass in created at and updated at. And the values that we want to pass in are going to be the same things, except they're going to come in with colons because we're going to grab them from a dictionary. And the data in that dictionary are basically going to be first name, and that's going to be the request form first name, Then the password isn't going to be the request form password anymore because it's now this new variable that we just created called password. And then created at and updated at are just going to be now and now as functions. And strings of now and now. Cool. Alternatively, and probably more easily, we can just say, yeah, let's do that. Cool. All right. At this point, let's make ourselves a new variable called user. And it turns out that SQL Alchemy, when you do an insert, will return the row that got inserted. So let's go ahead and play with that. So my DB, query underscore DB, query, comma values, and print user at this point. What's that? I got data, sorry. Cool. All right, so if there's no errors, let's do that. If there are errors, let's do a couple things. Let's say flash errors. So we're going to push all those errors into a flash object. And then we're going to go through and say return redirect to slash. So we're going to send ourselves back home. All right, if we didn't return redirect, what do we want to do? We want to return, possibly, render template. Well, let's return redirect somewhere else, to the wall. So we basically said either go from here back to here, or from here over to here, depending on whether or not we logged in successfully or not. You could obviously rewrite this and move this return statement up to here if you wanted to. I like to have my final return statement at the last part of my definition. All right, cool. Any questions about that? All right. So let's make ourselves a login. All right, so login, again, we can print the request form just to see what we're getting and make sure that we have what we want coming over. And we're going to kind of go through a similar logical pattern as we did here, but it's going to be much shorter. So all we need to do is basically say, hey, what came over? And get this information. I don't really care about too much else. All I care about is, can we actually get a user or not? And if we have a user, what do we want to do? Well, we want to look at that user and see whether or not that user's password matches the password that got passed in. So if, and then this is another bcrypt call. So bcrypt, again, I don't remember them exactly, but it's going to be this check password. And normally what I would do is I'd look them up, but I have them already memorized or pre-hard-coded. So we're saying, hey, bcrypt, let's check the password. And the hashed password is going to come from user, right? But user, all of these SQL Alchemy calls return a list. So again, just like before, our list is either going to be empty, or it's going to have somebody, and the person that we're going to be comparing to is this first element in the list, which is index 0. So user bracket 0, bracket quote password. And the password attempt isn't just password attempt, it's request.form, bracket quote email. All right, so we basically have to check two things. First thing we want to check is if user, and if either one of these fails, and they'll fail in order, so we'll check this one first. So we make sure that we actually have a user bracket 0, and then we can check to see if the passwords match.
So if you go out tonight, but if you didn't have that validation to check to see if you already had that email, you had the email in there twice, would that be where it would, so you would return 2 to that dictionary?
It would, but you'd still be looking at just the first element of that dictionary.
So you would just ignore
The second one, yeah. So the second person could never log themselves in again. So they might have registered, and then it would be all sorts of messed up. So, all right. So this is true, and this is true. Then what we want to say is return redirect wall. We haven't actually set the user yet, and we'll do that in a second. So let's do that on both our events. We'll call user ID equals user bracket 0 bracket quote ID and session bracket username equals user bracket 0 bracket quote name. And we could have done that, and we will do that right down here as well, where we said, hey, all right, since we got our user right here, and we're going to eventually go to the wall, let's do that at the same place, same thing there. Good?
Where is it? That second part where it says user 0 name, should it be first name or is his name?
First name. Good call. And if we wanted to get first name and last name, there are some ways that we could do that. Like we could do what Aaron did the other day, which is using concat, and say basically, hey, let's make a concatenated name using a space in between first name and last name, and call that and then call that name. Cool. All right, so there's login and registration. All right, so log out. Log out, what are we going to do? We're going to say, hey, session, let's pop a couple things. And what we're going to pop is user ID. There's other things we could do to make that like shorter. If we wanted to, we'd say session clear.
Is there one over the other that's preferred or more standard?
It doesn't matter too much. And you can also delete keys from that session. So you do del user ID from session. So all three of those would kind of work. We're going to use session clear just so that we clear the session completely, regardless of what we have in there. And then we're just going to redirect back to home. All right, so there's a happy fat logout. All right, now the wall. All right. So the wall. What do we want to do from the wall? What's the query that we want to get all of our messages and comments? We know that we want to get messages first, right? So we're going to say query at a minimum equals select star from comments, or sorry, messages. All right, so that's fine. We don't want everything from the messages, so we want messages dot message. We might want messages dot ID. Why would we want the ID? Just out of curiosity.
So we can link it.
Yeah, and what are we gonna link it to?
Comment or users and comments.
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 Yep, it's gonna get linked to the comment. So we need to be able to say, hey, this comment is a comment for this particular message, and how we're gonna do that is using the ID. Okay. We're gonna get group concat, and we're gonna group concat comments. Sure, we'll group concat comments. I think I have to change that around a little bit, but we'll play with that in a second. We'll wait on that one, actually. All right, message ID. We want to get user dot name, first name, And we want to concat these. User's last name as name. So now we can get the first name and last name. We want to get when that message was created at. As him at. Yeah.
It looks like you're using double quotes for your string.
Oh yeah, thanks. That would cause problems. All right. Cool. All right, so we can get a couple things. Let's just try to get the group concat the comments too. So, is this a subquery? Do you guys remember? Let's look it up. W3 is a good resource for group concat. Let's take a look at it. Let's look at an example of it. All right. So here we've got a group concatenation of publisher ID and then category underscore ID. All right, from group, let's see what we've got. Category underscore ID. How is it concatenating these guys? By group, by publisher ID. All right, so they're going after the different groups by their publisher ID. Did you guys, any of you play with group concat, or did you guys do it different ways? Normally I do it a different way, but I was just going to have fun and play around. All right, well, let's try this. Select star from comments where comments .id equals messages dot comment, or sorry, comments dot message ID equals message ID. Messages ID. We'll see what happens there. It's probably going to break and we'll have to play around with it. All right. All right, so we're going after messages right now, but we have references to comments, we have references to users, and so we don't have any access to those tables yet. So how do we get access to those tables? We have to create access to those, and those are with joins. So we're going to say from messages, left join, and what we want to left join is we want to say, hey, let's left join users. And then we want to say, how do we want to do that? We want to say, well, user's ID is equal to messages.user ID. User ID. All right, so we can look back at our table. And if we look at our table and our ERD diagram, so we have this user ID here. And if we clicked on that, assuming I can actually click on something. Come on, you. So notice this nice little orange highlighting. It shows the actual connection. So that's where the on's going to occur. So it's going to be between users.id and user underscore ID, or messages underscore ID. So similarly, if we wanted to connect comments with messages, we would do that. Or there. Cool. All right. So we've got user's ID and messages. We also want to get our comments, right? So left join comments on messages bracket comment, or sorry, messages ID is equal to comments dot message ID. All right. So that should be able to get all of our messages. We don't need any data, and we can say, hey, messages is equal to mydb query underscore db query. Print messages. All right. Now let's go ahead and take this whole query. So there's no variables that we're passing in here. So we can just go ahead and take that thing and drag it over to MySQL Workbench and see what the heck happens. See if we have any errors in it. So this is a pretty common thing that I do. I'll basically just take the thing, does not seem to like things, so let's see what it doesn't like.
I think at the end you put a colon instead of a semicolon.
That's a semicolon. Let's see what happens when we run it. So I have an error code in it. It should be somewhere. Usually it'll highlight where the error is going to be. Ah. Let's see what happens if we just group concat all of the comments. We may have to modify this a little bit. And let's group concat comments dot what? Comment as comments. Come here. Man, this is the worst UI I've ever seen. All right, let's see where the error is now. Okay, so from as comments, no comma there. All right, let's run that. All right, so we get our comments coming back in theory as comments. We might want to group concat something else along with that.
Should that be after the adds comments?
What's that?
Should that be after the adds comments?
Yes, it should be. Thank you. All right, so we fixed that one. Let's go fix the other ones in Atom. Because I think it's easier to read over here. All right, so the one that didn't work, this group concat. All right, so that will be all the comments. We can group concat comments dot created at if we wanted to as C created at. What else could we do? And we need to get comments users, right? All right, so comment creator, first name, comment creator, well, let's just do first name and last name. This is really ugly. Let's not do it this way. All right, abandoned mission. we get all the things from the messages. Great. Let's make a second piece of information that we're going to pass over. All right. Query equals select comment dot or comments.comment comments.id. What else might we want from comments? Comments.created at. Now we don't have to even join these things anymore. Sorry.
You'll probably still need to join comments to users.
Yes, we will definitely have to do that. We're going to still join and make almost the exact same join here. So ID created at. Anything else we want from our comments? That should be okay. All right. Then we want to do from comments. Left join users on users ID is equal to comments dot user ID. All right. Cool. All right, so now we have all of our comments, and we're going to pass them over to our template. Any questions on that? Okay. So now we'd have to go over to our template and do stuff. Yeah? Sure. You look, maybe you have questions.
No, I'm just trying to keep up.
Okay. So basically all we've done with these two things is basically said, hey, let's get our messages, our message ID, and then let's add our user's first name and last name just to make a single name, and then a created at as m_at, and we're just combining the messages and the users. And we did the same thing for the comments. So if we ran these queries over on our database side, still have one error somewhere. I don't see the error though. Let's see what happens when we run it. Oh no, it's running fine. No semicolon probably. Nope. I don't know. But it ran, so we got message, message ID, name, and message at. So we should be able to get the right stuff. All right. So now, let's go to our wall. Oops. All right, so we're sitting in our wall. What all do we want to say in our wall? Let's just say h1 welcome user bracket, or sorry, session bracket username. We want to be able to say, let's go ahead and loop through all of our messages and comments. All right, so for message and messages, because we passed over that messages array, let's do something. What do we want to do? Yeah, let's put them in. So let's put them into a nice, I'll make the forms in a second. Is that what you're asking?
No.
Oh.
Just stretching.
Gotcha. All right. So let's say H5. Message created by message bracket name on message dot created at. And then we could format this created at differently. So how do you format dates?
STRF time.
Oh, we're doing the,
Does it take a pipe in Flash? I think it's just dot.
yeah, I think we do it this way.
I don't know, probably percent Y. N.
Sure. Let's just go for %D and see what happens.
Yeah, that might be minutes, not months. Which I think happened on one of my red belts.
Let's try capital M. We can look this up if we want. All right.
Close the H.
Is it?
H5.
Oh, thanks.
And also, I think your date string has to be quotes.
Message created at. Yes, it does. All right, and then let's just put a P tag in here. All right, and in that P tag, we're just gonna say whatever the message.message is. All right, now it's gonna get ugly. All right, we're gonna go for for comment and comments inside of that for loop. And we're basically going to say if message bracket quote ID is equal to comment bracket quote message ID, then we're going to show it.
Don't you need double equals?
I don't know, we'll try both. Ginger 2 I always get confused with. So
Yeah, I mean, Ginger 2 might be just a little way.
does that make sense what's going to happen? So basically, if the message ID is matching the comment message ID, then we're going to show that particular comment. All right, and we're going to show the different pieces of that comment that we want. So let's do the same thing, except we'll say comment. Instead of comment created by, we'll do comment by. Let's just put this in a P tag. Comment.comment, comment.name, and comment created at.
I'll close the P tag on line 14.
P tag's not closing.
Cool. And I think we name these things, so this is message not created at, it's just m underscore at, right? Let's look at our
I think so.
server.py. So what I'm looking at right now is this line here, so m at. And let's get the comments created at, so that is comments created at still. All right.
But it doesn't look like you're selecting comments.message ID.
I am not. Comments. Cool. And this is MID, so I need to go after it and get MID as well. Yeah. Oops. So this is not comment. That's fine. Okay.
Still on line 13 message sub MID. It should be sub MID is equal to comment message ID.
Yes. There we go. Okay. Cool. So that should be close to working. Now for every message, we want to also make a form. So that form is how we're going to create a new comment on that thing. So form, the action is going to be comments, and the method is going to be post. And we're going to have an input field that's going to be a type hidden. And the reason that's a type hidden is going to be name equals message ID and value is equal to whatever the message ID is that we're passing in. That value is going to be message bracket quote m_id. So now we can add that to our field if we want to. All right, so we've got that input. We got a text area. Oops. That's going to have a name of comment. Cool. And I think that's all we're going to need. Input, name, or type text, or submit, sorry. And its value is going to be create a comment. Cool. All right. We're going to copy this form for messages. We're going to say, hey, let's create a message instead. And we don't need this top one. Let's change this thing to message. All right, so create a message, create a comment. All right, I think that's pretty much the wall, part of the wall.
Can you explain what is this input type hidden line is doing?
This one, this guy?
No.
Oh.
On the HTML, the wall page, where you wrote input type hidden,
What is the
and the form
importance of
action comments
line 22?
downwards.
Oh, thanks.
What is the importance of hidden?
So basically this is going to just have a hidden input field that will hold our message ID. So it basically a way that we can access that message ID easily, but a user won't see it because a user doesn't care what message they're commenting on. They could be commenting on message 5002, or they could be commenting on a message 1. And we don't necessarily want to show them that directly, but we don't really care if somebody inspect elements and sees it. So, yeah.
I'm sorry. Do you have would there be another way for you to transmit that information?
Sure.
Other than hidden input?
So another way we could do is we could pass it through with our action. So we could have said, hey, instead of doing it there, we could say, let's make a comment for this particular message ID. And then have caught this message ID on the back end. So we would have caught it through one of the request parameters instead of through the hidden input.
Now, why would we need the message ID in a different route?
What's that?
Why would we need that message ID later on?
Why would we need it later on?
Yeah.
Well, we're using it later on regardless, so we need it one way or the other, right? Because this one's it's just gonna be how it gets over there. So in this case, it's gonna come over in our form. In this case, it's gonna be coming over in our request parameters.
And we shouldn't be using session.
We should not be using session.
Could you explain why?
You want to store as few things in session as possible. So,
The important things.
Because I would say because session persists, nothing explicitly tell it to. Whereas for this message ID, we're using it once when we post this comment, we will not use it again.
does that make sense? And it's much easier to pass these things around than set session dynamically. All right. Cool. So I'm just going to use one of them. I actually prefer the action way. It's just that a lot of the, like if you look at how the platform presents it, I believe they present it more often this strategy. So
The action way is closer to the RESTful route.
Yeah. Yes.
I also prefer the hidden input myself. But
Yeah. Cool. All right. So that should be that part of it. So we've got two more things to do before I stop this video. And that is, let's finish our login and registration really quickly. So we just have the form. And then we'll test it out. And we need to basically add our queries for messages and comments when we add stuff. So let's do that first. And then we'll finish the login and registration. And then we'll test it out. So we need two more routes. We need one for messages and one for comments. Def at app.route quote / messages. method equals post. And def add message. Let's call it create message. And all we're going to do is basically take that request form and add stuff, right? So we're going to say, hey, let's make a query equals insert into messages. So that's where we're going to. What we're going to insert? Well, hey, we know those things, right? So the first thing that we're going to insert into messages is the message. The second thing we're going to import is the user ID. The third thing is created at. The fourth thing is updated at. And the values that we're going to put in here are going to be colon, message, colon, user ID, now and now. All right? The data that we're going to put into this thing, data equal. All right, the two things that we're going to add in, well, we know that message is going to come over from our request.form. So key of message is equal to request.form bracket quote message. And the key of user ID is going to come from session bracket quote user ID. Cool. All right, and then we're going to run it, mydb query underscore db. And we're going to just run query, run data, and then when we're done with that, we're just going to say, hey, let's go back to the wall. Return, render template. Oh, we don't want to render a template though. We want to do what? Redirect. Because we want to go and rerun all the queries on the wall. All right, so similarly, this is almost the exact copy of this route. So at app.messages or comments, we're going to create a comment. We're going to insert into comments. We're going to pass in comment. We're also going to pass in message ID. So that's where we're going to use that message ID from. So values. That looked really weird to me for some reason for a second. Message ID. That's why it looks weird. All right, and then we need our last key value.
Probably need another close parenthesis on line 88 and 98.
All right, and so the last thing we want to pass in here is message ID, and we want to make sure that we bring this thing over in the same place. So it's request.form. And let's just check what our wall message looks over. So name is m_id. So that's what we want to get. And then
900 would be comments.
yes, good call. And same with
Yeah.
this one. Doesn't matter as long as these things match, but let's make sure all those are consistent. So Control D, Control D, Control D, comment. And this one's still going to go back to message ID. Good call. All right. So that's looking pretty solid. Anything else we want to change before we do the last little bit? All right. So let's go ahead back to our index.html, which is totally blank. Let's make a little h1 here. Welcome to the wall. All right, login and registration. So we're gonna make two forms. /register value, oops, method equals post. And let's do it the slightly more attractive way than my usual way. Let's just use list items. So we're going to have a bunch of list items. All right, so first thing is going to be an input type text, name equals first name. And we just put first name here.
Can you use list items outside of an unordered list like that?
Mhm.
Or ordered lists?
You can. Last name.
I use the label. That way you don't have to change the list style.
Yeah. That would work totally fine as well. First name, last name, email.
Tables are a way to make your layouts look good. They are very bad for accessibility, so shouldn't do that.
Yes.
Except for I did on, I don't know, maybe all my red belts, because it does look nice.
Yeah.
What is using tables for layout. It's bad for accessibility, like screen reader technology does not handle well if you have a table that's just for layout as opposed to that carries actual information.
Sorry, it's kind of boring to watch me write HTML.
There's something come talk a few months ago all about accessibility. That was the one bit of that that I took away.
Submit. And the value for this submit is not going to be a value. Yes, it is going to be value. Sorry. Equals register. All right, so there's that form. Let's copy this form, stick it below this form, call this thing login, make this login yay, and we don't need anything except for that and that. All right, so I think that should be close to being a functional wall. Let's go ahead and start testing it. It's probably going to break in at least 5 places, but fortunately you guys have been really good about helping me fix things while I've been screwing them up.
So on the red belt, would you recommend spending, I don't know, an hour and a half writing out all of your code before you test any of it?
No. I would recommend
I feel like that would
not
be
doing that.
bad. Yeah, well, if you get all the way to the end and you've written all that code.
All right, so let's just test it. So Python server.py. All right, so let's see what happened here. Keyword argument method on init. So let's see where I probably wrote method instead of methods. So it's going to be on server.py, methods. That one's okay. That one's okay. All right. So hopefully that'll work. All right. Oh, did I not save it there? See this nice little blue blob? Didn't save. All right. All right, cool. Step 1. Low close 5,000. All right, so that's not horribly ugly, but it's really still kind of ugly. But at least it's not all in one big thing. So Mike, Hannon, and I didn't do any of the message flashing, but we have that flash message set if we wanted to message flash because it's just sitting in that errors object. So we could have done that, but I just didn't. I'm not going to do that. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So long object. Let's see where this is occurring. So 65 and register. So let's see what our register is. So session user ID user 0 bracket quote ID. Yep. So maybe that. Let's see what the print is on our terminal. Remember, I asked us to print a print before here. So here's this immutable dictionary item. So that's what comes over with register. Right, so that's all the information that I just passed over. So that came over. It hit our register route. And then we got all the way to line 65 of register where we said, hey, user ID equals user bracket 0 ID. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. So register route. Here's line 50, but we didn't print user and see what it was. So let's print user at this point. And we tried to do it there, but we actually probably should have done it above there. And we already have it here, so we shouldn't actually have to rerun this query. Yes, we should. Never mind. All right. All right, let's retest that. All right. So this is the first user that came back. So it failed, right? So that's why it redirected us back to the wall. So let's see what user 2 print is. So let's comment this one out. So that was that one, which basically said, hey, there is already a user because it actually successfully got here, ran this registration, and we just broke right here. So this thing broke. So, well, actually, this line broke. All right. So let's register a new user. JB.
You have the parameter in which it can be less than 2.
Less than 3, so 2 is okay. Or sorry, less than 2. Because remember, I was like, oh, SU wouldn't work, but we want that to work. All right. So that still didn't work, but let's see what the print was. All right, so we got back the ID that came back, not anything else. All right, so we need to modify our query at the end of that. So user wasn't what we quite expected, so let's get user the way we wanted it to. So this is going to be select, query 2 equals select. And we just want to get ID and username, or first name, from this. We don't need everything. From users where ID equals quote ID. All right, value equals a dictionary or data, I guess, since that's what we've been using most of the time. User. So we want to go ID, right? Is equal to user, because user was the actual ID. And then we're going to say user equals this thing again. So we're basically just overwriting user, and then we should be able to access it. Whoa.
The colon in the dictionary.
Sorry. Yes, thanks. Okay. So
And the indentation might need to be indented a level inside the dictionary 68.
oh, this is fine once it'll look better though, but it would have been fine. Yeah. Once you open the braces, doesn't care anymore. So that's why you can do something like that or that. All right. So there's that. Now it should come back correctly. So let's see what happens. Blah, blah, blah at Gmail, blah, 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 register. Oh, broken. What have I done? Wrong type for socket. Wow, that's one that I've never seen before.
Try to turn your server off and back on again.
Yeah. All right. So that was a get because I refreshed it. Blah, blah, blah at Gmail, blah 2 at Gmail. So
How we fix it?
Because password
values required for bind parameter. Insert into users.
I remember how to fix it.
What did I screw up there? First name, last name, email, password.
And look what the parameters passed were.
I-
Was the hash, right? Oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry. I guess I looked at it. I figured out what the problem was and then didn't tell you. So sorry. That's okay.
All right. How did I pass just in that thing?
Oh, it's on line 70. What query are you running?
Oh,
Data.
that makes sense. All right. Next try. Back. Law 4. Okay, so that's fine. That's just my template. So I just didn't end something on my Jinja template. All right, so back to the wall. All right, for, end if, end for. So which for loops did we not end? Well, we didn't end this one.
I think you want one of those enforced to be before the form.
Yes, I do.
Because it should be.
Yep. All right. So there's message and messages, or comment and comments, message and messages, and for and for. All right. All right. So now we can create a message. New message. All right. There's our new message. We created them by ASDS ASDF, and let's make a comment. Let's make another message. This is another message. Create that message. Great. Those are looking okay. And a comment on message 1. Create that comment. And then a comment on message 2. Create that comment. Cool.
How would you put
It's okay.
well the comment by that's a lot earlier.
This. In what sense? What do you want me to do with it?
How did you put the comment by in there? Yeah, I'm guessing you did that by putting comment ID equals message ID, and then you grab that out of there.
Yes. Yeah.
Just in terms of the time formatting, I guess capital M is minutes, not months.
Yeah, let's fix that. All right, so we had this year-to-date string formatting. Let's try lowercase m.
Do we have to import it?
Was that
Do we have to import the?
strif time?
Yeah.
String to time? You have to use it somewhere, I think. I think that's where date time comes in, but it may already be there.
In Jinja, I think when you use it in Jinja, you don't have to. If you're
Yeah.
using it in your server, you do have to. You have to import date time or one of the other time or date modules.
Yeah.
But I believe Jinja will do it for you.
All right, so there now we've got a different month. So 6/13. And there's a bunch of string to time.
Yeah, I think possibly strftime.org was bought by someone who just wanted a quick reference for Python's strftime.
Yeah, so this is all it does. You can basically look up everything. So if we wanted to do September, we would change this thing from -m. Now we look at our wall, and now we should have the correct month. Cool. Any other questions before we adjourn? All right. Thank you guys for your help. And that was the wall. Oops, let's stop this somewhere.